So I'm here with my good friend Ada Pally, who I've known for 8 years. We worked together when you were working on the SurveyMonkey account with 3Q, then called PPC Associates. And PPC Associates 3Q was the agency of record for SurveyMonkey. One of the smartest marketers I know, has been around through ups and downs of economic times, and has been with so many different companies and agencies and just has so much wisdom to offer. So I feel lucky that I get to have a conversation with you on video and record it and ask you a bunch of questions about like your opinions about what will happen and ideas for anybody watching this can get out of it. So let's start with like, where were you in 2008, the last time there was a recession, and like any parallels with what will happen now? Because I think everyone has agreed that we're probably entering a period of economic slowdown, whether you call it a recession, whether you call it depression. I guess it matters whether you have a job or don't have a job. If you have a job, you don't really care what everyone else is calling it. If you don't have a job, it's a depression. So that is what it is. So any insights?
Yeah, no, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me about this. I love the throwback to 2008. There are a lot of parallels for sure. In 2008, I was several years out of university and really struggling in startups to justify the value of marketing. At that point, everything was marketing communications. It was writing and press releases, and emails were the most sophisticated type of digital marketing. There was really no UX involved in websites or conversion rate optimization. And so I pretty quickly pivoted into offering SEO and website services for small and medium-sized businesses and startups. By the nature of churning through different startups that kept failing, there was always one thing that really stood out, and it was being able to justify the value that marketing was providing to an organization. So I worked through a lot of small contracts, and it really just became this scrappy nature of figuring out what works, and then realizing that, you know, through digital measurement, it was really easy to say, this is what marketing is doing, and this is what works, and proved a lot of value for several different clients at that point.
So what's your secret on digital measurement? I think that's one of the biggest challenges any marketer will have is marketing gets viewed as an investment and a cost center rather than anything providing value. Now, we're on the marketing side. I think engineers could be more expendable, should be more expendable than marketers. Marketers, if we can prove it, we're helping the company make money, and engineers, they do, but they're a little bit further away from that final conversion. So what's your secret?
I love that you're firing up the marketers versus engineers.
Sales is next.
That's always there, right? You know, I think one of the things that's been really interesting over the last few years has been marketers becoming more engineer-oriented through data sciences and analytics. And you certainly know the difference between SEO and technical SEO. And on the technical side, you know, there's a big component of something that infringes on engineering there. So, you know, justifying marketing today is in some ways not as easy as it was in, say, 2011, because there wasn't as many walled gardens. If you could measure it, it was going to be accurate. Everything was in our control. There was very little automation that we were trying to figure out how to use. And so it was very, very transparent, very controllable. And today it's actually a little bit harder. Attribution really blends together. You don't have the transparency that you'd like. And so you're either spinning around in circles trying to chase very fragmented data, or you're drawing bigger conclusions and trends, hoping that they're in the right direction. There's also a pretty significant shift back to valuing communication and good copy and a brand and design. And personally, I love the fact that it's turned back into this melting pot of everything that's marketing, and a little bit on the softer side of the things that you can't completely measure. But then I think it's up to marketers to become really good communicators in showing that value in the way that makes sense for the company. Having worked with hundreds of different clients over the years, one thing that certainly SurveyMonkey did well, and I think we did well as a team, was being unified in that vision that all of these things matter. The sum of those parts is greater than what we're seeing, and sometimes less than what we're seeing if we're completely missing something somewhere, but all understanding that we're doing the best that we can with the tools that we have, being on top of a changing landscape, and being consistent with what we're measuring and making sure the trends are going in the right direction.
That makes sense. I love that you said it was easier to measure in 2011 than it is today. And that's always been my sense. Like, as big data expands, so now there's more touch points you can track. You can say, well, did someone open our app and close it? And it used to be in 2011, it's like, did we get a conversion in Google Analytics or not? What was the channel? And now we're tracking touch points. So my experience has been, and this is SurveyMonkey is a great example of this, is everyone is always in middle of building the perfect multi-touch attribution system. It never is complete because there's always a different add to it. And I remember the first time I heard the word data lake. This just sounds terrible. Like, you're throwing things, it's an ever expanding lake until it becomes a data ocean, and you never figure out what's happening. So you're always building this thing. And then the loudest voice in the room gets to win. And I always find the loudest voice in the room, totally incorrectly, is the paid marketing team, because they're spending money. So they insist on being able to share how they're adding value and they're converting and they deserve more budget. And that's completely wrong, because now they justify spending money that should potentially not have been justified. And I've seen this in so many places, like, many of the places I've consulted, they're also doing the same thing. And they're saying, well, in the meantime, we're going to do last click, but we are building our data lake and our multi-touch attribution. And, I even consulted with a company that's in the analytics business. And I thought I was asking a very simple question. So I was consulting on SEO, and I said, so which pages convert into leads from SEO? And they're like, well, how would we find that? And I was like, didn't have a response. I was like, don't you make a tool that could help you do that, like on a granular level? And they had not used their own tool to do that. So I love it. Like, I love that you're saying it's easier to track at 2011. I wish we could all go back to 2011 to say, well, it's brand marketing. Like, the billboards are working because we believe they're working, and not like, well, exactly how many cars, and like, well, we need to do a test. And another thing I'm sure you worked on, like, while I was at SurveyMonkey, is you have to remind me of what it's called, where you do the Red Cross test, the nonprofit test, where you put a nonprofit ad.
Oh yeah, it was like a blind A/B test, right? So we put up nonprofit ads as our A and SurveyMonkey tests as the B, just to see what would happen. Does it actually make a difference? I love doing those tests and try to do it whenever we can.
What was the result? Usually, what's the result?
Well, there really wasn't one, I guess is the best way to put it.
Data for data's sake.
Yeah, data for data's sake. It was, it was a success in terms of, really answering the question, like, is all of this display effort going somewhere? And, it was yes, but, right? It's yes, but we also did all of these other things, or yes, but all of these things were happening with the Red Cross at this time too. And that is the challenge, right? It's just all of this fluff. I love the data lake euphemism. The other one that I've heard is the Colorado River, with all of these different tributaries flowing into it, and then it becomes this massive thing. And I was talking through that metaphor with somebody a while ago, and somebody listening was like, well, doesn't it dry up at some point? And I was like, wow, that could also be the case. So yeah, there's just so much coming in that wouldn't we all just love to be working off of first click or last click, but we know that picture doesn't serve us well either. So there's a happy medium somewhere. It's either this super sophisticated blind A/B tests, or super simple, what matters most to us, the first introduction to our company or our product, or the one that's closest to revenue. And all of these decisions need to be made individually for each company. There's no right answer. There's no textbook to coming up with these solutions. So working to find a really individual solution is one of the things that I love most about my career, is that every company and every challenge is a little bit different with similar fundamentals. And the first one being, look at things a different way every time.
Yeah. So how do you've been in a number of companies, like how do you step into these roles? Some of these startups have ceased to exist. Like, how do you always like get back up and try again? Like, what advice do you have for anybody that is in this situation for the first time? Like, it's heartbreaking to see all the layoffs that are happening. And, you hear about this company cut 3,000 people and it sounds like a huge number, but to each person that's been cut, doesn't really matter that they're sharing that, experience with 2,000 other people or 3,000 other people. Like, they don't have a job. So
Yeah.
what do you say to them?
Yeah, I feel really fortunate that I have stable clients and incredible new opportunities to dive into, but I think anybody that is a good digital marketer is already somebody that is resilient and agile. By the nature of what we do in an ever-changing landscape, those things are already in us. So I can appreciate that people are, feeling sad and depressed and demotivated and frustrated and feel like they're swimming in a lake of other candidates and intimidated by that. But that's really something that we've always been doing. And so, I encourage people to carry on and try to get creative, be scrappy, figure out what drives you the most and the scenarios that you found that you were most creative, and kind of dive into those things. I've seen a lot of that, and I think it's one of the greatest success stories of this whole scenario to date, is I think people really digging deep and finding their character and what's really going to carry them through. But I want people to realize that that's already there. They just need to keep acting it out.
That's a great point. Like, if someone was at a big company and they lost their job, they need to remember that they once had that job, which means they have great skills and they have great experience that someone else is willing to pay for. And they need the courage to go out and convince people to pay for it. And I've found, like, through my consulting, that it's not really the most skilled consultant that will get the gig. It's the best salesperson. So has that been your experience?
I don't like saying the best salesperson, but I think that if I had to characterize the traits of the best salespeople and the best client services people and the most successful consultants, I would say that they are the people that first have clear boundaries about what they want to do or are good at. And not putting themselves into scenarios where they're not going to be successful. That's really critical, especially in this scenario. I know people are really hungry. Don't throw yourself into something that you're not going to succeed in. It's not going to put you on the right path. The second piece is that these people are very genuine and honest. The best salespeople work selling a product that they really believe in. And
Great point.
And can be transparent about that. It's easy to know things inside out. It's easy to talk about the benefits or the drawbacks or the challenges behind something in a transparent, believable way that people will quickly gain trust on. For me, I was always very, and continue to be very honest about limitations or threats or areas that I'm not good at. And, on the other side of that, say, but there's all of these other things that we can bring in. And so, I think if people are trying to sell themselves, have those boundaries, admit what you don't know or aren't good at, and have a plan for supplementing that. And then just, be really genuine and honest. And if you're talking about your own skills, that should be a really easy part.
Absolutely. So I'm going to put you on the spot on video and we can't edit this out. You've been in agencies. So to the new person that's about to start doing consulting for the first time, how do they price themselves?
Yeah.
You said don't undercut yourself and don't undersell yourself.
I think my best word of advice would be to try to get your potential client to name their price first. And one of the reasons that I say that is I've been doing a lot of pricing theory lately, and I'm sure you've noticed this too, Eli. There's a lot of different sites that are saying make a donation, especially course-based or information-based things. And that part of pricing theory is really interesting because people are paying more than maybe we would otherwise. So if you're just starting out and you're trying to figure out what you're worth, pitch things different ways and then ask for what that client thinks it's worth. And I think that fairly quickly you'll get an idea of what the market is like and what type of clientele and whether or not your messaging is really resonating. If this potential client comes back and says, no, absolutely not, give me your hourly rate, or give me your project rate, I would recommend going with a project rate. We know what kind of work is involved. It's again, setting those boundaries. And then it gives you the freedom to kind of work within that. If you can find efficiencies, kudos, find your own way to work within that framework as efficiently as possible. If you're working with a client that is really insistent on hourly, I would price it a little bit higher because this is indicative of a client that's going to push you a little bit harder, and even the time that it takes to track hours is something that you should be paid for. So keep all of those things in mind.
I love that. I always try to do value-based consulting. So like when I'm coming in with a price, it's based on a number that will be returned from the consulting. If that number is not high enough, then it's probably not a project either of us should undertake. But I find if I can sell them on value-based consulting and then I give them a proposal and they ask for 50%, that means that they are not getting the value. They're thinking about the investment rather than the return. And the one or two times I've gone for that, just because I felt like I needed to close business so I could eat, that's been a mistake. Like, I feel like everyone knows when it's not the right fit, and you should listen to that inner voice. So even if like you're afraid to starve, probably won't starve, but you'll be really pissed if you're stuck with that client.
Yeah, as soon as your intuition flares, say no and put your energy into something else that's going to work out better for you. It's a waste of time up front and certainly a waste of time afterwards to pursue those type of opportunities. It's tough when you're hungry to wrap your head around that, and it's really easy to justify things that don't feel right, but I completely agree with you there.
Yeah, and the best thing is if you end up in one of those, just know, like, that's your lesson. Never do it again.
Yeah. Yeah, and we all learn that lesson, maybe more than once, depending on the situations that we're in. But yeah, I think the reminder is the faster you walk away from something that isn't right, the earlier you're back on the path for something that is.
Absolutely. All right, so let's pivot to what you're doing now. So what's your latest thing?
Yeah, so my latest thing is a startup that I'm really passionate about. It's bookclub.com. We've got some good SEO challenges, as we just discussed, but it's something that we've pushed into really advanced beta, stood up a website and a few live Q&A events, which are virtual book clubs hosted by the authors themselves. So we've had some really engaging Q&A sessions with several authors already and are continuing to roll out those beta topics while everybody's at home looking for information to absorb and doing a lot of learning while we build our MVP and build up our author list. So I encourage anybody that has a passion for reading to check it out. We've got some amazing authors getting queued up and some pretty incredible content on the way. would love feedback from people at this point. Our beta is very much a beta right now, and we've got a lot of learning to do, but I'm glad we have the opportunity to do it in this type of an environment, as challenging as it might be.
Yeah, I'm glad you see the benefit of this. So is this like a sort of a Netflix queue for books?
You know, it's a cross between your classic book clubs in terms of having some author-led discussions, and then really exclusive content with the authors themselves, which will probably appeal more to real literary intense individuals and writers themselves to understand the motivation behind the story, and get to know the authors a little bit better. We'll also have some type of masterclass level content. And then of course, a lot of community building around people that are book passionate.
That sounds really cool. And
Yeah,
how big is the company now?
we're really small right now. We are doing a lot with a little team. It's a very typical startup, but I really love the team that we've built so far, and things are going well. We're having a lot of fun and solving challenges every day.
That's great that you're optimistic to make a startup in an environment like this. And I think that there is a reason for optimism, because, that's the entrepreneurial spirit. Like if we weren't entrepreneurs, we would lay it all down right now and say the world is ending. And it's great to see that people are starting things and doing things. And I love talking to my clients and finding out, not that they're actually going to embark on certain things because there are too many moving parts right now, but they want to embark on things. And from an SEO side, I'm getting more questions than ever about building SEO. I don't think anybody's actually going to do what it takes, because getting buy-in from people on Zoom is a lot harder than putting people in a conference room. Who knows when the next time that will happen again, that you can put a bunch of people in a conference room will be. But now is a great time for SEO, great time in general for digital marketing.
It is. I'm really baffled by a lot of the numbers that are coming out. I completely understand that there are companies that have lost a lot of revenue and are really hurting. But costs have also decreased quite a bit in a lot of places. And I think if a company can handle it, now is the perfect time to be investing in things, especially in SEO, right? Some of these more evergreen things that take a little bit more time. We need to make it happen. Take some of that paid spend where your search volume has dropped, right? I've been talking to clients right now. They're like, wow, we're not spending our budget this month. Why aren't we? And it's just because less people are searching and there's less competition in the auctions. And so it's actually more efficient, and we're not able to spend all of our budget right now because things have just slowed down. So then what, right? It's a perfect opportunity for companies to be really rethinking their strategy and investing in places that they've put on the back burner for whatever reason.
Yeah, that's so interesting that companies.
There's a lot of writers out there that would love to be developing content right now.
Yes. Yeah. It's interesting that you're seeing clients not hitting their budgets on paid. I'm talking to people who are just completely pulling their paid budgets because the environment is so uncertain. They don't know if they'll get any ROI. Whereas like maybe they had a CAC model that used to take X amount of time until there's a conversion. And now that may have doubled, that may have tripled. And again, it totally depends on what business you're in. Like, if your business can't legally be open right this moment, but you can be open soon, like, do you spend money on that? Any inspirational things you've seen in the advertising space, like of something people are doing that is creative?
Anything really inspirational? I wouldn't say that I've seen anything really inspirational from an execution standpoint. I do appreciate how challenging it is for companies to find the right message around support. And I've certainly seen some what not to do in terms of some fear mongering and things like that. That's always really disappointing. I've seen far more people band together and, support their employees and support great causes and do the right thing. I haven't seen any creative yet that's really blown me away, or any campaigns that have been particularly impressive. But I have seen companies that have been willing to step away from their models that they stare at metrics every 10 minutes, right? And say, okay, these metrics are completely wrong right now, given the landscape. What else can we do?
Right.
And um, and shift based on that. And that's definitely the right thing to do right now, is just really be willing to abandon what you've been stuck to for the last little while and completely rethink it. And those are the companies that will, at an appropriate time, come up with really great creative and really compelling campaigns, but most importantly will be more successful in the long run.
Totally agree. I want to give a shout out to all the ad agencies that are doing ads on TV right now. Every once in a while, I turn on TV just to watch the ads because it's kind of interesting. Probably outside of travel, I think the industry that is the most challenged is the automotive industry, because they have made 2020 model year cars that are made and sitting in lots, and no one's buying any cars. And a lot of TV is dominated by the ads to try to get rid of these cars. And they have these, like, it's been amazing how quickly, again, credit to the ad agencies, not the car companies, they've been able to pivot into like these heartrending, emotional, like, we're with you, we'll bring the car to you, like, here's a car for your family, and they put the whole family in the car. They've changed their payment terms. That's out of desperation for financial reasons. Like, the ads are really cool. And anybody hasn't seen these ads, go watch TV. That's all that's on TV. Like, everyone else is like gone to whoever their buyer was and said, nope, we're not advertising in March, April, May, probably not June. And then, you can tell how desperate like the TV channels are, because after the car ads, every other ad is like it's a house ad from the TV station about like wash your hands and stay home, and the CDC and all that. So they're just filling spaces that were canceled. And then the other ads I've seen are Google and Facebook are running TV ads. Same idea, like Google shows queries supporting essential workers in a query sense, and then Facebook is advertising their groups, but they're just picking up like remnant advertising. So I think, again, that's all the ad agencies. Great job, they're pivoting. But online, I just mostly see people picking up remnant, or ads are disappearing. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's, TV for me is really interesting because so many people are at home watching TV right now. And, I think if you're an advertiser that's previously been spending a bunch of money on TV and you're letting go of the ad inventory that you've secured to Google, you need to really rethink your overall strategy and where you're putting that budget.
Yeah.
The companies that have the money to be spending on national TV spots, I would hope would be in a position where they would be able to sustain that with inventory being cheapened. So it's really interesting to see where some of these weak points are in company strategies that, not necessarily should be able to survive something as dramatic as what we're going through right now, but should be something that isn't an on-off switch. And to me, that's been one of the most remarkable things to see, is that people have gone from spending 6 figures a month to spending none. And there's a lot of learnings to be taken away from that. I'm actually really excited to see some of the data of these type of tests, but it's definitely tough for the agencies that are trying to survive with those type of clients, and a great opportunity for companies that have the room to move.
Totally. Okay, so any last advice for someone that wants to embark on a consulting career out of a lifelong ambition, or out of necessity?
I think my best advice is just be willing to try. Be willing to try to partner up with people with complementary skills. Think about what you're good at and balance it out in whatever way you can. Be willing to try to either focus in on some of your best skills or industry and get really niche. Or if you're in a situation right now where you are really niche and you feel like that's limiting you, really try to broaden your horizons. One of the greatest pieces of opportunity right now is the amount of resources that have been made available for free for people to train. There are other people out there that want to learn and want to teach and are happy to support and share. I'm one of them. Don't be afraid to reach out to people that you think could help you or be a good partner, and be willing to stretch and be ambitious.
That's great. All right. How do people get in touch with you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. I am the only Ada Pally out there, so I should be easy to find. Yeah.
And bookclub.com.
Yeah, and bookclub.com. Would appreciate feedback, and they can also find me at my website, adapally.com as well.
The only adapally.com too.
I'm the only one. It's a real benefit. So unsurprisingly, that domain was not taken.
Yeah, I don't have my .com, but I optimize for myself on Google. So hopefully no one has to direct type in my name.
Yeah. My website's pretty rough right now. So LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Ada. It was great to chat with you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.